Okay, it's 9:03. I like to respect people's time and not punish them for being on time. So once again, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule for this important presentation. The first Vice President, Brian, is going to show us a video from our Councilwoman Monica Montgomery Stepp.
Good morning, NAACP. Happy New Year. I'm Monica Montgomery Stepp, Council Member for District 4 in the City of San Diego. Thank you so much for allowing me to share a few words about the gas and electric franchise agreements, and thank you, President Maxwell, for the invitation. I think what's important to recognize here, especially for an organization like the NAACP that's committed to fighting for social, racial, and environmental justice, our advocacy throughout this process is about climate and energy justice. This is the people's land, and we must never forget that. Over 60 organizations joined forces to tell the city to reject this bad deal with the incumbent utility. And it was the right decision to reject the sole bid from SDG&E for the gas and electric franchise agreements and to negotiate a 5-month extension to reevaluate the terms of that agreement. I would have preferred a 1-year extension, but this 5-month deal allows the city to continue to receive revenue from franchise fees. This is a step in the right direction, but it is imperative that we have robust community outreach and discussion during this 5-month period. Mayor Gloria and the chair of the Environment Committee, Councilmember Sean Elo Rivera, have begun to schedule public forums to capture your input. As elected officials, we have a responsibility to ensure that the next bid, at the very least, includes provisions for the right to purchase, a prohibition of the minimum bid being passed on to ratepayers like you and me, and establishment of a climate equity fund for our communities of concern. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you have a powerful meeting.
Thank you so much. Our councilwoman is chairing her meeting right now, Public Safety Livable Neighborhoods, the first Public Safety Livable Neighborhoods of the year. So we appreciate that. Welcome into the spirit of what we're about to dive into. Okay, Brian, we're gonna share the screen with, is it Warren?
Okay, Warren.
Hold on real quick, Mitch. Hey, Francine, can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I apologize. Mitch is just logging in right now.
Okay.
So maybe we'll just give him just a minute.
No problem. Happy New Year.
You too. Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. Thank you for coming. Mitch, are you in?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
That's Liz.
Hi.
Hi. Mute yourself.
Okay.
So,
Brian, do you see Mitch in the holding area?
no, not yet.
I don't see him he's not in the waiting room.
Okay.
Yeah, the waiting room's empty.
He says he's waiting now, Francine.
Oh, okay.
He's not in the waiting room for this meeting.
Brian and Francine says he's asking if you. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm trying to balance two.
Oh, there he
is.
is.
Do you see him? All right, perfect.
There he is.
He should be letting you know, Mitch.
Okay.
Excellent.
Okay. So just click on the green share screen button for which one of you is going to be
Good
joining.
morning.
Good morning, Francine. My apologies. They had to fix my Zoom this morning, and obviously when we were fixing it, something got screwed up in the process. So I apologize for the delay. But
Oh, that's okay. We're just
they
glad
called
to
me.
have you.
They called me and said, "Hey, Mitch, we got to fix your Zoom." So, all right. Okay. So, Nick is Warren is Nick gonna run the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. I want to say thank you very much, first of all, for being here this morning for the town hall. And Francine, thank you very much for the invitation. I really appreciate the opportunities to talk to people about, not just things that are going on with the company, but things that are going on within the community. And so this opportunity today, I welcome it. This discussion about energy and the discussion about a franchise agreement and the discussion about the energy future of San Diego is ongoing right now. And it is a discussion that we have been having for a couple of years now. And I appreciate the opportunity to walk you through with my colleagues some of the issues that are being discussed in this conversation. I think it's important to note up front that we are a big company and everyone is a customer. And we take this role, even though some people don't believe that, we take this role seriously. And when I say that we take this role seriously, we're always looking for ways to improve in both the delivery of service to our customers, improve in our communication, and more importantly these days, improving the way we deliver energy and the type of energy. And I think that energy is not just the electrons and the gas that comes through the pipes and wires, but it's the energy we provide within the community. I think many of you who know me know I spend a tremendous amount of time out and about and around the community because it's not just enough for me to say that we were successful in keeping the lights on or the gas flowing. For most of us, it really is important that we are spending time listening to what's happening around us and outside our space and contributing in ways that uplift the community and benefit the community. And so it's days like today that I really appreciate because we get a chance to talk about energy, but also to answer questions that you may have about our energy and our service delivery, about our company, and about the future of San Diego and the San Diego region as it relates to the franchise agreement, but also as it relates to our progress as an energy company on the environmental front. So with that introduction, we'll go right into the presentation. I have with me today my colleagues that are specific to components that you will hear a lot about with regard to the franchise. Tashonda Taylor is someone that you will hear from, and she has a big focus on the customer care side and the programs that we offer to help people and what we've been doing during COVID. I have Ellen here, who is the lead face and a lead voice as relates to our partnership with the CCA that is expected to launch this year in March and continue transitioning into the fall. I have Adam here. Adam Pierce. He is the guy that we have brought in to really talk to us and help us as it relates to rates. And you're going to hear from him later because I know there are a lot of questions about rates, and people, rightfully so, say, listen, I get a bill from you every month. I'd like to know what it is I'm paying, and more importantly, why is my bill going up? And that is an important question, especially as it relates to the franchise. And then I also have with us Warren Ruiz, who is many of you may have met. He's out and about, part of my team. We try and canvass our entire service area of 25 cities, and he's a big part of helping us keep our ears to the ground and finding ways to intervene and be a positive factor. So,
and Mitch, a proud NAACP member, I might say so.
NAACP member. Thank you. And so with that, what I will do is I will start with the first slide here, and then I'm going to, as we advance, I'll bring people on to talk a little bit more about these slides. one of the things that is important to note is you've heard from people and you've heard in the press and you've heard a lot of people say that we're rushing this conversation around the franchise. And I am here to tell you that nothing could be farther from the truth. This, you'll see here on the screen a letter that I sent to Chris Michelle back in April of 2018. And I sent this letter because I believed that it was important that we begin the conversations about the franchise agreement way back then. A franchise is a really important agreement and partnership between a company and a city. And the rationale for sending the letter was we wanted to talk about the environmental objectives of the city and figure out how that could play into the new franchise. We wanted to talk about programs that we were advancing around energy efficiency and customer service programs. We wanted to begin thinking about modernizing our relationship with the city of San Diego. And unfortunately, even though we sent this letter back in April 2018, you'll see my signature there. At the time, the mayor's office and Chris were not ready to have that conversation. And one of the things we said to them is this is complex, it's complicated, and we believe that we need to have a lot of conversations before we move forward. And so today, you're hearing a lot of people say we're rushing through this. Nothing could be farther from the truth for us. We have truly been at this, talking to people, thinking about things, listening since 2018. And now, as you know, we have agreed to an extension through June 1. And we did that out of respect to Mayor Todd Gloria. He is the new lead voice at the City Hall. And we said, you know, it is only fair to you that you get a chance to sit down and that the new council members have a chance to learn more about what we've been talking about. And so I just wanted to level set with that statement up front that this is not something that we started last year. This is something that we have to start 2 years ago, and we've been working at it aggressively. Next slide, Nick. So one of the things that I love to talk about is that there's an overview that we always present. It's important because you'll hear a lot of comments about us as a company in the next 5 months. And first of all, we as a utility take great pride in being innovators. And when the governor first announced their desire to have a renewable portfolio standard, you know, we said, okay, this will be interesting. And they set the original number at 17%, and then it went to 33%. And then it went to, you know, now it's at 100% or 60% renewable by 2030. We were the first company, first utility in California to achieve 33% or at 40% renewables. And at the end of 2019, we're sitting at 42%. So you'll look at this chart and you'll see what we call the accomplishments because they're important as it relates to our customers. One, we are delivering renewable energy. So 42% of everything you consume every day is coming from wind and solar. And we're aggressively pursuing the state mandate of 60% by 2030. You know, what we do on energy efficiency is important. These days, people are looking for ways to reduce their costs. And, you know, in 2019, we had $15.7 million in energy efficiency rebates and incentives. And look, I'll be honest, I want it to be more. We think some of the rebates should be higher because they will be more impactful when you have to buy a new refrigerator or a new washer or dryer. But in the end, our energy efficiency focus is significant, and we're now sharing it with a bunch of third-party organizations who are helping us get the job done. We always believe that it's important for our employees to come to work and go home safely, and also for our customers to be safe. And we've had the best year in the company history for employee safety last year. Wood to steel poles, you've heard a lot about our reduction in wildfire risk, and a lot of that is because we're building our system to a 100-mile-an-hour standard and moving wood poles to steel poles. Now, undergrounding. A lot of you probably have an interest in this. 60% of the region's wires are underground. So you'll hear a lot about undergrounding and what we're doing. We lead the nation in undergrounding. And I'm proud to say that because a lot of times people say, I don't like looking at wires from an aesthetic standpoint, but nowadays there's a mitigation component, which is you reduce the risk of fire starting when you put wires underground because you don't want to have down power lines and high winds and bad weather. Power lines can drop to the ground. And we always say that, you know, don't touch them, back away, let us fix them. But 74% of the city of San Diego is currently undergrounded, and that's the tops of any major city in the country. we're spending a lot of time on upgrading mobile homes, and when we upgrade them, what we're saying is we're changing the panels and trying to innovate and make them more efficient as it relates to the delivery of electricity and gas services. And I'm happy to say that in 2007 we learned a very valuable lesson that climate change was happening aggressively and quickly, and we had to take steps to try and create a system where we could see the weather coming ahead of time and do everything it took to prevent fires. Fires are a major contributor to GHG impacts and climate change impacts. And in our region, and many of you have seen this throughout California the last 3 years, wildfires have been a problem for the rest of the state. And we're luckily, knock on wood, to say we've had 0 fires in our region since 2007. And that's a tribute to the men and women of IBEW, and it's a tribute to the hardworking employees of SDG&E, because we've made this a commitment, and we're always striving to improve. And then last but not least, on the environmental front, one of the things that we know, 50% of our problem with GHG in this region comes from vehicle emissions, plain and simple, comes from cars, comes from trucks. We live on the border, the busiest border in the world is here connected to our region. And so we have trucks, 800,000 trucks crossing the border, coming into San Diego and driving north to Los Angeles, and that number continues to increase annually. Diesel's not a great thing, but one of the things we did say, we made a commitment. We said, look, we can do our part to try and advance and promote changing trucks to electric, changing school cars and vehicles to electric, and you'll hear more about this, but we've installed 3,000 chargers for medium duty and heavy duty transportation equipment, and also we're beginning to look at putting chargers in at more aggressively at schools and state parks and beaches, and that's coming here. I'm beginning this year. So that's Nick. Okay. One of the things that happened in 2011 is the company said to me, we want you to go to Sacramento, and we want you to think about how we can be more aggressive in our effort to truly impact the 25 cities that we serve in San Diego gas and electric service area. And so in 2011, I started taking that wonderful trip every week to Sacramento. And we began to think about how we could be a part of this environmental movement that was happening in San Diego and actually throughout our service area, including the gas company. And so the beauty of it is the company said, create opportunities. That was important, create opportunities. It's really easy to be the utility and to just deliver electricity and gas every day. I'm sure that all of you who enjoyed a hot shower and a warm meal this morning, you were thankful. But we said, look, these days, we have to be more aggressive and create examples of how we are committed to this effort, committed to the effort of a cleaner, greener San Diego region. And so what you'll see on this chart are just a few examples of things that we, your utility, created. And I'll give you a brief introduction to each of them. In 2013, I looked at the port of San Diego. As a matter of fact, we have 4 ports in our service area for Sempra Utilities: Port Hueneme, Port of Long Beach, Port of LA, and Port of San Diego. And I said, we can do a lot to try and reduce the emissions impacts that are hurting the lungs of people alongside the ports, the working waterfront. And so we wrote a bill called the Port Act, and we introduced it. Governor Brown signed it, and they were actually surprised. Why are you coming to us and saying you want to help the port be cleaner? And we said, well, look, ports are economic drivers. They provide good paying jobs, but we can do this, all the work and all the activity, while reducing the impacts on the environment. And so the Port Act bill was basically a tool to allow us to go in and assess what the port could do differently to reduce emissions, how we could transition their existing operations from diesel and petroleum to electric and hope soon hydrogen and renewable natural gas. And in our situation in San Diego, the port covers Imperial Beach, Chula Vista, National City, and San Diego, and Coronado. And we said this is a great opportunity to impact all 5 of those areas. And the governor signed it, and we are the only utility in the state of California that has applied, has submitted an application to the PUC and had it approved. And we're now beginning to look at how we truly modernize the port and working with them as a partner. And we're excited. AB 20, in 2016, we thought about how energy storage could be really impactful. And this one is bittersweet because what I said to the governor's office is, look, energy storage is the future, and the future is now, right? We need to store as much of the excess renewable power that's being generated during the daytime as possible, store as much of the excess solar that we have. And so we asked the governor to let us get into the business of looking at how we could use energy storage, and more importantly, how we could create microgrids where we could island off whole sectors, right? So that instead of building more power plants, our new modern power plant would be the energy storage unit. And we talked about putting energy storage at the ports. We went to the city of San Diego and said, hey, look, we'd love to put an energy storage project at your emergency operations center so that you never have to worry about it going dark no matter what happens on the grid. So the governor signed that bill, and we filed our first application. We've been given some instructions from the PUC about where they want us to focus, but we're excited because that was our idea. Again, electric vehicles. Again, 50% of our emissions problem are vehicles, cars and trucks. So in 2018, we went to the legislature and we said, look, we'd love to install charging with IBEW at schools, state beaches, state parks, and county parks. And the legislature overwhelmingly supported us on this. And this year, we will begin installing at locations. We have a general focus, which is we want to reduce range anxiety so that people aren't afraid to buy EVs. And we want to reduce range anxiety so that cities can start to transition their city fleets. And think about this. We've already said this to Mayor Gloria, and we said it to Mayor Faulkner. There should be a day where every vehicle that is driving up to a city park or a beach can plug in. But more importantly, city fleets can begin to transition so that they are driving in the cleanest fashion possible. And the last one I'll make mention of is you hear a lot about natural gas. And natural gas is a fossil fuel. People will tell you that we are stuck on the past and that we don't want to transition. And that's an unfair statement because they're ignoring what we've been doing. We have, for the last 3 years, pushed for a bill that will allow us to really focus on the creation of hydrogen and renewable natural gas. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. We believe that hydrogen electric trucks are the thing that have to happen sooner rather than later, because they will allow us to haul goods out of the ports, they'll allow us to move goods. Your Amazon trucks, your FedEx trucks, your UPS trucks, all of those trucks can be cleaner as they're driving through each of our neighborhoods. We also have talked about renewable natural gas. You can take wood waste, dead trees, and create renewable natural gas that is cleaner than that it gets you to a zero emissions footprint. We have a vision that at the port, at the convention center, that someday soon we'll be able to take food waste. If you think about all the food that is wasted at conventions, turning it into energy, a renewable natural gas that can be used to power the convention center. So when you hear the statement that, well, they don't really buy into the city's climate action plan, this chart is evidence that is just not true. And I want to make that statement again. This chart is a small sample of what we've been doing. We don't talk about it publicly, but these ideas are all ideas that we brought to the legislature and that they agreed with us and passed. And now you're going to see in San Diego an opportunity for us to, again, advance storage and clean up and work at the port to be the cleanest port in the country and promote electric vehicles of all types and more. And now hydrogen and renewable natural gas so we can decarbonize the pipeline. That aligns in every way, shape, and form with the city's climate action plan focus, not just the city of San Diego, but every climate action plan that you're going to find in the county. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. A lot of what we do quietly. And this, I'm going to bring my colleagues on to discuss some of the things that are coming up. But I wanted to give you this slide because I think it's important. Back in 2005, 2006, the PUC said to us, hey, we have a goal. We want you to spend more of the money annually that you're going to allocate with diverse businesses, TBEs, women, minority-owned, service-disabled veterans businesses, LGBT businesses. We think this is important. And they set a goal of 22%. Tashana, was it 21 or 22? I think it was 21%. Mm-hmm. And what we said was, okay, and a lot of companies balked at this. They didn't want to be told by the PUC that how to spend their money. But we jumped right in. And Deborah Reed at the time was our CEO, and she said, look, folks, this isn't something I want you to just begrudgingly do. I want you to embrace it, understand it, and promote it. And I want you to do this with a focus on being the best. And I am proud to say that as a company, we have annually led in this category. Even though we were instructed to be at 21%, we have been at above 40% annually on every year. 45% of our procurement dollars were spent last year with women and minority-owned businesses. Specifically, we spent $55 million with Black-owned businesses in 2019. We have a goal of spending more than $125 million by 2025, and that's important because in a COVID-impacted environment, it's not about today, and we're trying to keep businesses afloat and open. It's how do we ensure that they have a future, and that commitment that we want to make, that we're making, is important. And we spent $76.9 million with DBEs in the city of San Diego, in 2020. Now, that's an important component because when you look at your next franchise winner, whether it's us or it's someone else, this should always be a focus. What is that franchisee, the holder of that franchise, doing to truly positively impact the community? And what we did in 2020, spend almost $80 million with DBEs. And those are those contracts with those individual businesses, or sometimes they're contracts with people that they're your friends, your neighbors. That's important. And so I like to put this slide up because I do think that we're not just a company that is here to deliver electricity and natural gas. We have an opportunity. We have an obligation to continue to create a stronger business core, especially with small, diverse businesses. And hopefully they go into big, diverse businesses who provide services. The rest of the slide you can read. We support a diverse employee team. We've been recognized a variety of times. I want to point out the last bullet. Last year, for the first time, the team worked hard together to build a hiring fair with Councilmember Montgomery, and I think it was a huge success. And the first time we've done it, and hopefully it'll become something that's a regular thing. We're a great employer, and I think a lot of people, when they have an opportunity to apply and come work for us, they stay forever. And then last, on our community giving, this is something that you don't have to do, but we do it. I'll point out one thing. When COVID first started in February, we were the first company in the region to go to the foundation and say, we need to have a fund to support people. We annually get $58 million separate every year, but the COVID fund was important because we knew we needed to focus on food insecurity and helping people get through these tough times. And so we put $1 million into that fund. The fund grew to over $10 million. And I'm proud to say that, again, that's what big companies do, like ours. You step up, not step back when times are tough, and it requires leadership. And so, and of course, we all remember the horrific incident in May, where the community had a moment, the nation had a moment, the world had a moment. And we thought about the fact that we've always had a focus on Black community causes, and working with the Central Black Chamber and working with the Earl B. Gilliam Bar and these days with my good friend Tony Young at Ruiz. But we've done some amazing things even beyond that under COVID, because the social justice discussion is appropriately positioned, and we have to continue to have that conversation about equity and social justice. With that, let's go to the next slide. And Tashonda, I'm going to turn this over to you on the COVID-19 response. Now that we've talked about it.
Good morning. My name is Tashonda Taylor, and I am the Vice President of Customer Operations for SDG&E. So let me start off by thanking the NAACP for organizing this town hall and allowing us to have a dialogue with you all and the community. I also like to thank the attendees for taking the time out of your busy schedule to hear a little bit more about SDG&E. As Mitch said, we're a lot more than what you get in your either inbox or mailbox every month. And we like to take the opportunity to tell our story, to educate people a little bit more about the company. I just want to add on to a little bit of what Mitch said. I've been at the company for 21 years, right out of college. I did an internship as an engineer and been there ever since. And this company values diversity and inclusion as a competitive advantage. And championing our people is one of our key values. So all the things that Mitch said, we as a company definitely walk the talk. And I'm proud to work for a company that values that in its diversity within its employees. So I like to talk about some of the things we did to answer the COVID-19 response. Supporting our communities are extremely important because the employees that work for the company, we are part of the community. So it just makes sense that we do our part to do everything we can to help, especially during a pandemic. So like everyone else, we as a company, we had to be creative. We had our folks that could work from home up and running to support customers 24 to 72 hours. And we are not a work from home type business. So we did everything we could to make sure that not only our employees, but the public was safe as well. So delivering reliable service is just core to what we do. Safety and reliability are key tenets. So we made sure that our folks that are out in the field, whether you need a pilot light lit or you smell a gas leak or there's wires down because a car hit a pole, we made sure that our folks took every safety precautions, and that includes our contractors. And we also ensured that we did not we suspended all disconnections for customers for unpaid bills. So anyone that was having a hard time during this, and Lord knows we all have had our fair share of hard times during this pandemic, the last thing you needed to worry about as a customer is having your electric or gas cut off. So we took pride in not doing that. We also we continue to have payment plans for customers. That includes local businesses and residents that are smaller. We take pride in making sure that we talk to our customers and we make sure that we can partner with them in whatever the plan looks like for them to be able to pay their bills to keep afloat, whether, like I said, whether they're residential or they're small or medium or large size customers. Mitch mentioned that part of the pandemic response, we were one of the first companies to come to the table and really support the San Diego COVID-19 Community Response Fund by putting up the first $1 million. That says a lot about who we are and what we care about. And so, again, as an employee of the company, knowing that the company responded so swiftly to helping our community makes me feel proud to work there. And then again, safety measures. So I personally manage the employees that come to your home and light your pilots and turn your gas on, change your meters. Those folks report in my organization. And I got to tell you, no matter if you are healthy or even if you're exposed to COVID, our folks suit up. They suit up, they go in your homes, and they service you. And that's the responsibility we have as a utility. We make sure that we put all the safety precautions in place so that you get the service that you need and your service stays up and running. And so just imagine, I wish I had a picture, a visual of it like a spacesuit. Our employees gear up with that type of suit on and go into homes and do what they have to do if there are any signs of COVID exposure in the home. And we've done that 1,000 times year to date since the pandemic. And we will continue to do that as long as possible. So I just want to let you know that your local utility, we're here to support the community, even during times like a pandemic. And we do what's necessary to make sure the lights stay on, the gas stays flowing, and that we keep the community and our employees safe at all times. So with that, I will be on for additional questions if you guys have them at the end of the presentation, but I'd like to turn it over, I believe, to Adam to get into some of the information about our rates.
So as Adam prepares to come on, one of the things we thought was important is that you will often hear from people that we have the highest rates in the state. And, it is important to note that our rates are complicated, bills are complicated. And I want to make a couple of comments before Adam starts. And that is that we thought that the next few slides are meant to simplify, are intended to try and simplify what our rate structure looks like, what you're paying for in your rates, and more importantly, to level set, about what you're paying in the city of San Diego versus what you would be paying if you didn't live in the city of San Diego, and why. And so with that, Adam, we'll turn it over to you to get started on electric rates. And again, we're going to be open for questions at the end of the presentation, but I think this is a really important discussion because the rates that you're paying, there's a rationale for each and every component. And Adam's going to try and walk you through. Adam, go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Mitch, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me to talk, as Mitch said, a very complex issue, which is setting electric rates. But I'll try to break it down into some of the basic building blocks of what each of the components that you potentially see on your bill and provide a little bit of an overview of how these rates are set. So the first thing I wanted to mention is that our rates are, I guess I should back up. SDG&E, as you know, is a fully regulated entity. And so what that means from a rates perspective is anything that goes into our rates is fully vetted by the CPUC. So all the revenues that we're looking to recover through our safety and reliability capital spending, all of our sales forecasts, all of that is regulated by the Public Utility Commission. And not only is it regulated by the Public Utility Commission, a lot of what we do and what goes into rates is also fully vetted and approved and reviewed by consumer interveners as well. So a recent proceeding that I had been part of that was setting sort of the different rates across all of our different customer classes included us and 12 other settling parties. And all of those parties represented different consumer interest groups, various cities, various organizations, to ensure that their organization's interests were properly addressed and the CPUC understood their perspective. So that is a big component of this. It's all voices are heard, as well as the CPUC has the final say to vet, understand, and approve the rates we have. And so I wanted to use this chart here on the right to level set what the building blocks of the different rate components that we had. And so on the left-hand side, I'd say is our sort of core infrastructure and commodity costs. So we wanted to first start on the infrastructure side and on the transmission. So you see 3 cents of our system average rates right now are related to our transmission lines. And so what that really is these are the large long haul lines that you see as you're driving down the freeway that take energy from a power plant into our region. Big lines, big infrastructure, and that makes up a component. The other infrastructure component that I wanted to call out is the distribution system. So what that really does is it takes the energy from those transmission lines and takes them and distributes them out into our community, into our homes, into our businesses. And those are the smaller poles and wires that you see, potentially the ones that aren't undergrounded throughout our communities to deliver our power. So between those two, the transmission and distribution side of things, those make up about 45% of our total rate. So these are our backbone of our service territory. This is what is providing our energy, and this is what really drives of the revenue that SDG makes. The other big component you see there is the commodity side. So this is the energy from those power plants that are loaded up onto those transmission lines and onto those distribution lines, and used to power our homes and our communities. Important thing to note about the commodity portion, and this 7 cents here, this part of your bill, this is an element that all California IOUs do not make any profit on. This is a 100% pass through to our customers. There's no markup from when we buy the commodity from the power plant to when we deliver it to you, the consumer. I just wanted to make that point clear regarding that point of our commodity business. The last part I wanted to highlight is the legislative mandate section, that's 6 cents. And I pulled it out a little bit here just to talk about it a little bit more specific. It makes up a large portion of our bill, about 25%. And these are non-tangible costs. So we talked about the infrastructure and the commodity. these are additional costs that the state has looked to us as the utility to implement their policies to help achieve a cleaner energy future for the entire state. So these are things like the RPS standards, so complying for what Mitch talked about earlier, 60% renewable energy by 2030, 100% by 2045. Those costs are embedded within that. This is incentive programs for energy efficiency or for renewable technology. This also encompasses our low income program. So these are things that are sort of outside our control and that are mandated for us to collect in. The side on the left is really more in our control, and once again, the commodity side is a pure pass through to our customers and no markup. But about 25% of our bill that really provides some additional pressure is from these state mandated programs. Next slide, Nick. So the next slide I wanted to talk about, we obviously have heard and understand that California utilities and specific SDG&E do have some of the highest rates in the country. From a bill standpoint, living in the moderate climate that we do have, from a total bill standpoint and looking at a national average, it is more in the middle of the pack. But looking at those numbers to the right, those are still high numbers, and we completely understand that and see, these are bills that customers have to pay each month, and they're not insignificant amounts. And what you could see here is we've broken it out sort of by energy usage, by electricity usage, and where location of where you live. So you could see across all of the different usage cases, it's a little bit, your bill is slightly higher if you live in the city of San Diego versus outside the city of San Diego. And that's related to the franchise fees that are levied by the city on the folks that live in those regions. And we can get into that a little bit more. I know there's a few slides after mine that talk about this and bring this to light a little bit more of what those franchise fees look like relative to others in the state.
And Adam, I just want to interject here. Again, I think this is important. Francine, you've always been just wonderful to talk to, and I've appreciated your offer to come on. This is that's an important statement that he made, which is, this chart is important. We wanted you to see it because you will hear a lot about rates. And we don't make money off how much energy you use or consume, right? If you want to take if you want to have all the lights on and you want to use 500 kilowatt hours, we don't make any money on the commodity or the actual electrons. We charge you what we pay for. And then, as Adam said, the infrastructure that, how we get it there, you do pay for that. I think that this chart is important because you don't hear a lot discussed about why the costs in the city of San Diego are a little higher than those outside if you live in the other 24 cities of our service area. And a lot of it has to do with the surcharges. You have a surcharge that is for undergrounding in the city of San Diego that adds some cost. You have a surcharge for general fund support aspect in the city of San Diego that adds some cost. So that's why you see the differentials there of if you're paying, if you live in the city, you're paying $148 for your bill if you're using 500 kW versus if you lived in Lemon Grove or you lived in Escondido or Vista, you pay 140, and same thing on the other side. One of the things we've taken great pride in is we've said we have to be better listeners. And Adam and I had this conversation about this chart and affordability because a few years ago we made a commitment. We heard people saying my bill continues to go up, and we said that's important that we do everything we can to address this. And so, we work in a complex business, and we have our detractors and people who will always say negative things about us and never say positive things. And I've kind of gotten used to that. But I will tell you that when we made the commitment a few years ago that we wanted to try and reduce pressure on bills, the list on the left side of this chart is important because we went to the commission and we made a public statement in the media. We said, we want to do a few things. Everybody remembers the summer of 2017. We had the hottest summer we'd seen in a long time. We had 13 between July 13th and the 1st of August. I want to say we had 13 straight days that were where it was 80 degrees or more at the coast, right? We had that period of July 13th or July 4th of July 13th through August was the hottest period in San Diego that we'd seen in 30 plus years. And everybody got hit with this thing called a high usage charge. My team was familiar with me saying, this is going to go over like a lead balloon. This was not something that we wanted. We actually told the commission we thought it was a bad idea, but they figured if we add a penalty phase in for people who use over a certain number of kilowatt hours, they will learn not to go over that number. Now, what they didn't take into consideration is when it's 80 degrees at 9 o'clock at night, you're going to run the AC. When it's 80 degrees at the coast, it's 100 degrees in inland San Diego. You're going to run the AC. But the commission decided that they were going to establish this high usage charge, and we opposed it and said this is unfair. Everybody who lives inland in particular, who's going to be suffering through the heat. And that summer proved it. And so everybody got these gigantic bills, and the phone lines were ringing at our offices because people wanted to know why the bill went up so much. Well, it was because they were being charged a penalty the commission had assessed. So we went to the commission and said, you've got to get rid of this. You got to get rid of this charge. And when we went, we figured we'd have a lot of people who would come with us and say, you know what, this is unfair, get rid of it. We don't like it. It's not the way to do it. And we didn't have any support from our detractors to get rid of this. It was amazing, right? We said, okay. And the commission rejected our application and said, nope, San Diego, you're going to have the high usage charge, and hopefully people will learn to use less. We then said, look, we have seasonal price changes. This was, in our opinion, absurd, right? Why should Francine or Brian pay more for electricity in the summer for electrons than they do in the winter? In PG and Edison service area, they don't have a seasonal price differential. We said, look, commission, please get rid of this. Just let us charge one price, whether it's winter or summer. We figured, okay, this is what at least our detractors will come in and support. Not one of our detractors supported us on this at all either, right? This wasn't about us. Remember, we don't make money on what you use. This was about San Diego and the struggle people were having with paying their bills. And we then said, okay, fine. Can we shift the timing of the climate credit? The commission agreed. And we talked about having a new baseline assessment study to make sure that what you're being allowed to use before you move into the next tier is the right number based on it's getting hotter in San Diego. But these are four things that, again, we didn't talk a lot about and run a campaign on. We just hoped that the people that were always criticizing us would say, you know what, this is a great move in the right direction, and we're going to support you and hopefully convince the commission together to make these changes. A lot of what goes on in energy at the commission really comes down to partnerships and collaborations and voices being heard together. And we didn't have those voices on this, but we still committed to do it. And we're still focused on trying to bring about bill affordability. And again, I can only say that we can make offers to meet with the people who criticize us most. You hear a lot from them. And a lot of times they won't meet with us, but we don't give up, and we won't in this instance. So we're going to continue to try and reduce the bill cost. Adam, continue.
Yeah, no, Mitch, I think you summarized my talking points great on this slide. So I think I'd just like to wrap up that, being relatively new in my role, this is an area of focus that I'm really undertaking in my organization. So these four things on the left-hand side, I'd say are just the start, not the end of things. I think we need to look at ways that promote rates that all consumers pay their fair share of the rates and the infrastructure costs, so that some customers aren't unfairly subsidized versus others. And what that will ultimately do, that chart that you saw previously, the 24 cents, my goal is to continue to reduce that, not increase that number, so that we can promote things like electrification, like EVs, what we talked about, getting more EVs on the road and reducing that 50% GHG emissions from transportation by having a lower rate for all customers, by allowing or making sure that all other customers pay their fair share, will help promote that lower rate and promote those additional technologies that will help reduce GHG emissions. So I just want to point out that this is a main focus of mine, and something that I'll be spending my time solely focused on is bill stability, bill affordability, and making sure that are helping to ensure that KWH rate is reduced to help promote those technologies.
Okay, thanks, Adam. We are, as we move on to the next slide, and talk about the franchise itself and franchise fees in California, I wanted to end Adam's point with one of the things we've seen during COVID is we've really seen the needs of San Diegans increase. Many of you know that I spent 4 years of my life trying to rebuild the San Diego Food Bank and save it from bankruptcy at a time where we thought we'd never see more than 350,000 people a month coming to us for support. We're now at the food bank seeing 650,000 people come. One of the things we talked about was we knew that electric bills would be a problem. So we at the beginning of COVID, we said, well, we're waiting for the commission to make some changes. We put $1 million into our neighbor to neighbor fund to try and help people with paying their utility bills. We were the first utility to run a campaign in California around the program called LIHEAP. This is a federal program, comes from the federal government, and it's an energy assistance program. And you can go, and if you have a bill and you can't pay it, and you need $300, you need $500, you can go and apply. There are 2 organizations that provide that money. And one of the things, again, that I take great pride in is that we don't talk about it, and you often hear more negative than positive, but we do a lot of things like that because we understand that utility costs are not a luxury, they're a must. You know, your rent, your mortgage, utilities, your food costs, those are things that have to happen every month. And that's why we're always looking for ways to impact positively our side. So, and now with that, I'm going to turn it over to Warren Ruiz. As you know, franchise is the big discussion, and franchise fees are going to be a major component of what you're going to hear about in the next 5 months. And so, Warren, I'm going to you.
Yeah, and I think the next 2 slides we presented, Francine, at your general member meeting that I think probably a month or 2 ago. So I won't spend a ton of time on these, but obviously energy is a hot topic in San Diego with the franchise coming due in the city of San Diego. As Mitch opened up with, we asked the city to start on this coming up on 3 years ago. We know it's a complicated topic. We know there are a lot of opinions. Many of those opinions are on this call. But just to sort of level set where the city of San Diego is in terms of how much franchise fee they get on their bills. And just like every other city across the nation, franchise fees are just added to the bills. You can see from both the gas and electric standpoint on this slide, miles above anybody else in terms of big cities. We surveyed the whole country. We can't find anybody even close on the electric side at just over 6.5% franchise fee. On the gas side at 3%. We have found some that are a little bit higher, I think, in the South, but we can't find, there's nobody in the state that even comes close to what the city of San Diego has in this current franchise deal. Next slide. So just in terms of what that means for the city, about $131, $132 million a year. Again, it fluctuates on usage because it's a percentage of your bill. $131 million goes to the city every year. Per the terms of the charter, 75% of that goes to the general fund. So that pays for, public safety and fire and parks and rec and libraries. 25% goes into the environmental growth fund, which is a little bit more designated. And you can see compared to the other utilities that the city collects franchise fees from, we're about 81% of the total franchise fee pie. So a really big deal for the city. If you go back, Nick, do you mind going back 1 slide? So if you look at kind of the right-hand side of the chart, most cities are around 1%. If we don't have a franchise agreement in place that's approved by the regulators, we are not allowed to continue collecting those fees, even if we want to or the city wants to. So it's really important that we have a franchise fee in place to continue collecting that differential, or else we have to go back to that 1%. So that's why Mitch sent that letter and said, hey, look, we got to get started on this early because we know how much it means to the city, which you can see on that next slide in terms of total fees. And next slide. I think, Mitch, are you going to cover third-party recognition?
I will. One of the things that we've said to the city council is that again, and you heard me say this earlier in the presentation, it's not just about delivering electricity and natural gas to houses and businesses throughout our service area. We're always looking for ways to improve in our service delivery, and our customer approach, and our communication approach. And we're always looking to try and be exemplary, and more importantly. And I think what you see here is we always say third-party recognition is important because it's not us patting ourselves on the back. It's others saying, hey, we're really proud of what you're doing. And this is just a slither. We took a couple from the last 4 years that we thought we'd highlight, some of these are really important. We received the Edison Award for our wildfire preparedness. The first time in 74 years we have received it. This is a major award given to one utility in the country. And we received it in 2018. We have been considered the best. We have been awarded as the utility that is best at keeping the lights on for 15 straight years, best in the West, Reliability 1. And I think that when you look at, again, our business award, for our business diversity award that we received in 2019, and some of the other awards, what these signal is that it's not enough for us to just deliver power. It's how can we continually improve, and how can we get better? And I will open it up for questions here in a minute, but I want to say something to Francine and Brian, that it's important. I do believe that conversation and communication is key. We have to continually improve how we communicate, how we connect with our customers. We have ideas about what we want to do going forward if we are indeed awarded the franchise to go forward for the next 20 years. And a lot of that, again, a lot of our ideas are fresh ideas that we've never done before, but we think that the time is right. I also believe that when you have a disagreement, you find ways to work through them. And you're going to hear about disagreements that we've had with the city. And I can tell you that I'm in a lot of those discussions these days where we're trying to work through them. And whether it's on the undergrounding issue, where the city has now acknowledged that we did not do anything wrong, that there was confusion, and we're working towards how do we finish the undergrounding of the city of San Diego and go from 74% to 100%. But again, a lot of it comes down to conversation and communication. We often request to meet with the people who are the most aggressive opponents to us, right? In a relationship, you're going to have times that you disagree, and it's important that you sit down and you talk to get through that disagreement, work out ways to resolve the differences. And it's always interesting when we make these requests, because our loudest detractors will always tell us they don't want to meet with us. It's sad, but that's what happens. And I wish in a perfect world that would change. Francine, when you and I talked about this and all the things going on, I said, Francine, can we meet? And you said, absolutely. I know that I noticed that Eddie Price joined. Eddie and I don't always see eye to eye, but Eddie and I have had a long-standing friendship and relationship, and we get together and we talk. And I think that we often work things out. It doesn't work that way with everybody, and that's kind of the sad thing. But when it does work, I think it's beneficial for everybody. You're going to hear a lot this year about SDG&E, again, the franchise. You're going to hear about the city's transition to the CCA, JPA. I want to make this comment about that. We are incredibly excited about the fact that the JPA is ready to launch. And our job, and Warren Ruiz works directly for me, and Kellen is working up at the commission. And we've said, look, we want this to be as smooth a transition as possible. And even yesterday, we were having a conversation with the CCA about the importance of communication, right? And that we can be better together if we are open and communicate. It's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's not about being in the press. I often get reports back from meetings where people say mean and nasty things about us. For those of you who are on social media, all you got to do is follow some of our detractors, and you can see some of the meanest comments possible about the men and women of SDG&E and the job we're doing. And I always tell our folks, stay focused. Let's always stay focused on the positive, and let's keep talking to people, and let's keep trying to get better, because that's what's important for us as a company, is that we're always trying to get better. We're not always going to be right. And for those of you who know me, you've never heard me sit in any venue and say, well, no, we're always right. You've heard me come out with vulnerability and say, look, sometimes we screw up. Sometimes we screw up. But we're always focused on being better than just good. And so it's moments like this and times like this that I appreciate. I don't think coming out of this and out of this year and the franchise discussion that people are going to wake up and all of a sudden decide, well, you know what, I should probably be nicer. There are some people who won't. But I think for those of you who know me, I appreciate you. I appreciate the candid conversation and the questions and the comments. And I appreciate the opportunity to work on things and resolving issues and problems. And so with that, Francine, we have finished the slide presentation, and then we're now open to questions. And thank you very much.
If people want to begin to raise their hands so that we can call on you, that would be great. I got no questions. Okay, so was Mitch
Our
that
pres-
informative?
our presentation must, oh, there's a hand right there.
Okay, go ahead, Tara.
Hi, thank you very much. I had read an article in the UT earlier this week, and SDG&E cited a number of reasons for higher rates, including some of the reasons mentioned today.
Mhm.
This included having fewer commercial and industrial customers than PG&E and Edison, having about 60% of its circuits and wires below ground, which are more expensive. And since 2017, SDG&E has spent more than $2 billion on wildfire prevention and mitigation.
Mhm.
So my question is, having circuits and wires underground also reduce damage to underground, which can reduce costs, which is great. But SDG&E ratepayers pay for placing the wires underground, which is about 3%. Meanwhile, SDG&E charges 86% higher rates than Sacramento customers pay. So undergrounding only accounts for a tiny fraction of the price. So I'm curious, what are the differences for the rest of it? And could the approximately $1 million per day that SDG&E extracts from the community be part of the difference, that profit there?
Well, I'm gonna luckily have Shonda on who could talk a little bit about the undergrounding because she had that under her umbrella previously and stuff. But I will say that I want to make a couple of comments before I turn to her and maybe Adam. First of all, for those of you listening, the $1 million a day number that you continue to hear is not true. What people did was they looked at the earnings for all of Sempra or for all of SDG&E for 25 cities. And so, yes, we do earn a profit. We're regulated by the PUC. They do not allow us to just go out and do whatever we want. We have a very firm, there's a very firm hand that oversees our actions and our activities and how much we earn. And that is important. So that $1 million number is not correct because they calculated over 25 cities. Number two, I think that on the undergrounding, yes, we take great pride in the fact that we're putting most of the system underground. Again, leading the nation, we think it's important. And the main component in the city of San Diego, for instance, that is sitting at 74%, there is a surcharge on the bill that is collected, and all of the money collected is going towards the labor cost of putting the lines underground. And so we competitively bid the work. And Tashana could talk a little bit more about that. And I think that it's important to note that when you mentioned one last thing, that the Sacramento customers pay less. The Sacramento utility is a municipal utility, SMUD. They don't have the same requirements that we do, but that are presented by the PUC. The PUC regulates the investor-owned utilities of SDG&E, PG&E, and Edison. So the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, they indeed do have their own system. One of the things that I can tell you, because I can speak from experience, because I had a loft in Sacramento from 2011 to 2016, is they pay a fixed charge. Everyone pays a fixed charge on the bill. So no matter who you are in Sacramento, every month you pay I think it's $20 now, maybe even $22 fixed charge that is presented on every single customer's bill. No matter who you are, you pay that $22 fixed charge. And we've often talked to the commission about, if we had a fixed charge, could we reduce pressures on bills across the board? Absolutely. We do have a smaller commercial and industrial base of employees. I always often talk to the schools, and they always ask the question about rates. And the difference between us, and here's the best example, is that we're the smallest of the three IOUs. PG&E is 70,000 square miles. Edison's 50,000 square miles. But I always give the example of schools. PG&E and Edison have about 6,000 schools each. When they're spreading their rate increase out over 6,000 schools, the impact is far cheaper. We have about 780 schools in our service area. So if you're spreading a penny out over 780 schools versus a penny out over 6,000 schools, obviously the impact is going to be far less over the 6,000 schools. So that's why we're always working hard to find ways to reduce the rates and reduce rates and reduce bills. And that's why I presented the chart that showed that we had asked to get rid of the HUC and get rid of seasonality. And hopefully we'll get more people that'll join us in that call for action. But at this point, we're still trying. And Deshaun, did you want to add anything, or Adam on Deshaun, I'll start with you on undergrounding, and Adam on the rate pressure. So Shonda.
Sure, I'll just talk about undergrounding and the risk mitigation activities that we've taken. So especially specifically in the city of San Diego. So as a company, we have about 60% of our system that is underground. And within the city of San Diego, that number jumps to 75%. So I'll keep this pretty basic. You all have heard about a lot of the fires that have gone on up north and even to the south of us in LA within Edison service territory. There's a lot of pressure being talked about in terms of risk mitigation for fires. Climate change has brought about risks that we didn't have in the past. So we experience more Santa Anas, we experience more differentials in our weather patterns. So a lot of those things have contributed to fire risk. So what we've done in order to really work towards elimination, mitigation was a start, but we really want to eliminate the fire risk for our customers within San Diego. And that means trying to come up with solutions, including undergrounding. Undergrounding is a more expensive option, but we think in the long run, the more we can underground our system, and it's not the only solution, but it's a pretty big solution, that'll be better for our customers. And the proof has been in the pudding. If you really looked at this last year, we haven't had any catastrophic fires within our service territory. I can't say that about our partners to the north of us. And that's because the company has really put a lot of effort into accelerating the undergrounding program, especially within the city of San Diego. I personally sat in conference rooms with the city trying to push plans on how we can get more done to make sure that we better serve our customers within the city of San Diego. I did that role for a couple of years, just working with the city on how we can be creative with undergrounding in the various cities. We have a lot of barriers that exist, but we as a team work together to figure out how we could accelerate that. Also within the city, within the undergrounding project, we work with a lot, going back to the presentation, diverse business suppliers to help us do that work. So that's a huge generator for jobs within our service territory, not only our company, but also partnering with diverse business enterprises on the construction to try to get the undergrounding done. So I'll turn it over to Adam to talk about the rates, but I did want to make sure that you guys understand the huge effort that we've put in place to not only mitigate, but eliminate the fire risk within San Diego. And it comes at a cost, but we think in the long run, our customers would benefit, because we don't want to see anyone have catastrophic fires like we did back in the early 2000s and even back in 2008 when people lost their homes. So with that, from a rate perspective, I'll turn it over to Adam to add a little bit more context.
Yeah, thanks, Shonda. And Mitch, I think you covered it really well in your initial explanation. Just a few other data points that I thought I would add on top of that. If you look at the slide that I presented, in that roughly 6 cents or about a quarter of our rates relative to legislative mandates, that's exactly what Mitch is talking about in terms of municipal utilities such as Sacramento that aren't regulated under the same construct as we are and don't have those level of costs. So that is one area that provides a decent amount of upward rate pressure. And then, overall and overarching, how I really ended my thoughts is this. Mitch talked about some of the fixed fees that he would pay up as part of the Sacramento bill. I don't know if that's the exact answer, but looking at things like that to make sure that everybody is paying for the grid costs to help reduce that KWH, that dollar per cents rate you're paying, is a real goal that we should be looking forward to and trying to help support electrification.
Ms. Francine, before Brenda asks the question, I just also want to make it, I think we answered Tara's question fully, but Tara, we would love to meet with you, and if we can give you more detail to what your question is, just please let us know and we will get that meeting scheduled.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I just felt like the slides that talk about the city of San Diego versus the other 24 cities you serve, and saying SDG&E rates are in the middle of the pack is misleading, since SDG&E regularly has one of the highest rates in the United States. So my question was more about the rates. I don't want to take up more time, but I don't think we got to the heart of it, but I'm happy to meet with you.
Yeah, will be.
Further.
And I don't think the slide we put up wasn't about the rates and the rest of the city. It was, I think the franchise fee slide was the one that we put up, which showed what the other cities pay for a franchise fee versus what San Diego is paid.
And just to clarify any of my statements, I had to understand completely that some of the highest rates in the country from SDG&E, I believe the middle of the pack comment I made was regarding total bills. So not looking at the rate, but looking at the bill standpoint, and that's just because the usage is a little bit less in our service territory. So sorry for any confusion.
Yeah, so Tara, we'll reach out and get some of these scheduled. We can give more detail. Ms. Francine, please.
Brenda?
Yes.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Brenda Miller?
Can you hear me?
I think she.
Barely, we can barely hear you. Maybe turn your mic up.
How's that? Is that better?
Much
you.
better.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. I truly enjoyed this presentation. I'm always pondering about my bills, and I get alerts in my email account, and I swear this is very convoluting. I'm glad we have people like you. I'll stay in my lane. But I do have a myth that I wanted to find out if it's true. When you have those blackouts because of the high winds and potential fires, I've been told that a radius of 1 mile of a hospital, people in those neighborhoods would not have any blackouts as a result of the hospitals could not have a blackout could not occur. Is that true?
So the short answer is that and this actually, it's a great question, Brenda. Thank you. And I will say before I answer that, I've been with the company over 15 years, and I still struggle trying to understand rates and my bill. So you're not alone. The short answer on the PS, the public safety power shutoffs is this: when we have criteria where the wind speeds reach a certain height as it relates to gust or wind speeds. 2 years ago, we tracked wind speeds at 107 miles an hour in Sill Hill. As you heard earlier, the climate change impacts have been tremendous, and so we have been forced to turn off the power to try and reduce the risk of it's not our lines, because we're rebuilding those to a 100-mile-an-hour standard. It's what blows into the lines when the wind's blowing above 50, 60 miles an hour. And so there are circuits that the PUC has allowed us to put on a list, and where we can avoid shutting those circuits down, we do. We've actually proposed to Mayor Faulkner, and he didn't take us up on it, and we're going to continue to propose it to Mayor Gloria. When we originally went to Sacramento in 2016, we asked the governor's office for permission to create special circuits that have police and fire agencies tied to them, all hospitals, and some of the water districts, because we believe those are circuits that need to always be powered, even when we have public safety power shutoffs. So it's not guaranteed that right now that if you're on a hospital circuit that you're gonna avoid being shut off. We are hopeful that the governor's office is going to give us permission to begin installing microgrids on hospital circuits, so that hospitals never have to use diesel generation to stay open and operating, but they will use these microgrids, which include battery projects and solar and fuel cells. But it is something that we're going to talk to the Mayor Gloria about, is we would definitely like to see San Diego get to the point where the circuits where hospitals are on aren't impacted because they either have their own generation system that's clean with a fuel cell, or the PUC tells us to avoid that. Especially right now during COVID, we've scrambled to work hard to try and make sure the circuits in hospitals stay on. Now, one thing to note about circuits is a circuit can be incredibly long. And Tashonda can give you some examples, but I'll give you an example about circuits and how they work. We had a situation last year where on one end of the circuit, the wind was blowing 65, 70 miles an hour. On the other end, it was blowing 25 or 30 miles an hour. A gazebo was lifted up off the ground on the end where it was blowing 65, 70 miles an hour and carried a good 200 yards, right? And that's the kind of thing that we worry about, because a gazebo hitting a power line, never going to end well. So that's why we often we shut the power off for that reason. But Tashonda, do you want to talk about the length of circuits and that on this issue sometimes?
I think what I'll say is, as a company, we're always looking at ways to increase reliability. So on some of those circuits that are longer, we are trying to implement what we call sectionalizing. That means we put equipment on a circuit to try to break it up. So if you're on one of these circuits that's longer, which means, you're at the end of a circuit and the problem may be at the start of it. So a circuit could be, think of, maybe the community that you live in. There could be several blocks associated with a circuit, and you might not necessarily be closest to the device that's opening or closing. So in order for us to create more reliability and functionality so that we don't take everyone out of power unnecessarily, we try to put equipment on the circuit to break it up. So we break it in pieces so we can focus on the piece that's closest to the risk and keep the rest of the customers on. So when I mentioned earlier, undergrounding is just a part of some of the solutions. Sectionalizing would be another part of that too, just to make sure we can keep as many customers on as possible. And I'm trying not to speak in technical terms, and we're bad at the utility of speaking in technical terms and acronyms. So if I say anything that's confusing, let me know. But those are some of the things we're trying to do to be better at keeping customers on during some of these high weather events.
Thank you so much. Jackie Clark?
Hello. Can you hear me, Francine?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And it may have gone over my head, but I do have a question about affordability now in COVID times, where 8-hour days are being spent by a lot of people who previously worked in office buildings, and now they are stationed at home.
Yes.
And so they're pulling on electrical resources with multiple monitors, laptops, jetpacks, work cell phones, private cell phones, televisions, everything that they would normally use within the office setting is now being used in their home settings.
Sure.
And so there are going to be increases in the bills based off of that type of usage. And that's like 40-hour work weeks plus, depending on what you're working on. So I wanted to know if there was any type of consideration, if that has been factored into this whole COVID type of relief for customers, and not based on affordability, but just in general, because like me, I live in a home, I rent a home, and it's older, and the electrical support is not great. So I have to pick and choose what I'm going to run at a certain time, and I can't use certain electrical outlets because the plugs fall out. Now, I know that's a landlord issue. However, just in general, I have a surge protector, and I'm careful about that because I know that those can cause electrical fires as well. So what type of support or information, where can we go to find out how we can keep our homes fire safe proof? I hope I said that right. In the midst of working at home where we were not doing that previously. And that's just one.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mrs. Clark. Tashonda, your team what we'll try and do is we'll get try and get in connection with you, and we may be able to have some people come out and take a look at your setup. I would say this, and I'm gonna have Adam come on as well because he's involved in these discussions. At the very beginning of COVID, this became a discussion, a concern, which is people are going to be working from home full time now instead of in their offices. I always tell people that it is you find out how much energy you can consume when you're working from home, and your two daughters, my two daughters who are 20 and 18, both came home from college to work from home, and and every light in the house would be on, and I would say, hey, what are you guys doing? You're killing me, right? And I think they will be glad to both go back to college campuses because they're sick of hearing me say, can you turn off the light in the kitchen when you're not there? But in the end, it is when you have all these components happening. The commission heard early on that the number of kilowatt hours that you're going to use every month is going to go up, because normally you're at the office using the kilowatt hours at the office. Now you're at home. And there was a big discussion about, should you give people a different baseline allowance during COVID? Because what the commission is seeing is they're seeing a growing number of people who cannot pay their bills because their bills are higher, the consumption's higher, Again, kilowatt hour usage is higher. And so the commission has a big decision to make in April of this year, because they have to look at, again, what is accrued. And, in a perfect world, I think that the baseline allowance discussion would happen quickly, and they would have said, you're right. But Adam, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about what the commission is going to do on this. And Mr. Clark, I can tell you that there are often days where I tell my two daughters, I'll give you guys money to go to Starbucks, but then they close the Starbucks and I couldn't see them there. Now I'm just having to pay.
Yes, I agree. I was sitting in front of the county library at one time, but then now, like, the battery doesn't last that long anymore.
No.
So I have to stay plugged in.
Yep, I know. Adam, you want to talk a little about what the commission's thinking?
Yeah, so I think you're exactly right. They have a decision to make in April of how they're going to look at things like baseline adjustments or around any sort of disconnections. I know during this difficult time that we've eliminated all sort of disconnections for any sort of late payment or non-payment. So that's something that we'll continue to do and support our customers throughout this pandemic. The other thing that we did along with the commission is we talked about that high usage charge. Although we're in the process of removing that, with folks staying at home and working from home and using more electricity, the amount of that increase associated with that rate was dramatically reduced, because we knew that people, were going to be not only, say you go to work and you shut your air conditioning off or your heater off, you're at home staying comfortable working from home. So we knew that electricity was going to be higher. So that differential in that tier has dramatically decreased and will continue to do so throughout the pandemic until we can get the charge removed like we hope we can later this year. So those are two really good examples of what we're trying to do to hopefully limit or curb that bill volatility that folks are seeing during this process.
Yeah, and Ms. Francine, we would love it if the NAACP wants to support getting rid of that high usage charge. We will welcome anybody that wants to write in and saying this is, and as Adam said, we thought this was ridiculous, a great example of it. You shouldn't be punished for using more than the commission wants you to when you're being forced to stay home, to work from home for safety reasons.
Yes.
No, never will make sense.
And I just have one more comment. When I was reading your slide on the bill affordability, and I think I looked down in the corner, it was slide 8. So one of your dot points was SDG&E continues to look for ways to increase bill stability. Well, I just want to say that kind of like can be taken in two different ways, because initially I read it as SDG&E continues to look for ways to increase bills.
Okay.
So maybe consider rewriting that, because I'm like, I stopped reading like, oh, you're looking for ways to increase bills, really?
Yeah. No,
So
okay.
it's just something that I noticed.
That's fair. We will make that change. Thank you very much for noting that. And I can tell you to increase bills.
Hold on, Brenda, we want you to mute.
Just 1 second, Justin. I'll call you right back.
Okay, Jackie, are you done?
Yes, I am. I'll mute myself. I'm sorry. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sonia Robinson?
Yes, thank you, President Maxwell, and appreciate this town hall for us to get some information out as well as have a dialogue. And so on the same discussion that's been discussed with the time of use, I am curious and would like to know, is SDG&E taking a posture to reevaluate what is currently in effect with the time of use based on the pandemic is one question. And if you need any community advocacy on this, what would you suggest as far as what's needed? Because I do believe the time of use, even prior to the pandemic, definitely shift the energy and our electricity charges onto residential customers, more so than on where it historically has been on businesses and even industrial customers. And so the peak hours used to be primarily during standard working hours, whereas now with the time of use, high rates are during times that when people get off work and are actually doing life and taking care of their families. And so now that we are in having to adjust our lifestyles as has been shared by Jackie and so many others, and even your acknowledgement, Mitch, of your students now using electricity. Used to be in the universities, now it's at home, people working. So is SDG&E taking a position of reevaluating their actually rate and how they're being charged with the TOU, with the time of use, and how will SDG&E address the moratorium that is scheduled to come up with those that have not been able to pay their bills because of the impact of the pandemic that's coming up in March? So those are my two questions.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Sonia. So, I love the time of use question, because here's a great example of where we needed partnership. We need partnership and help. Just like we mentioned on the high usage charge, right? You shouldn't be penalized because you're now working from home all day long, and when obviously you're using more energy, and they're going to try and charge you more. We want to get rid of the high usage charge. We don't want to see it reduced. We want it eliminated, and that's one area where the NAACP can weigh in, saying eliminate it. Time of use was a big discussion in the Capitol, and we were pretty loud and in our comments about. We thought it was an unfair discussion, right? In California, in the Capitol, there's a discussion about there being two Californias. If you live on the coast, you can open the windows and get some cool ocean breezes and things cool off, and it may be easier to reduce your energy consumption between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m., right? Because that is the period of time the commission has worried the most about. At 4 o'clock, we have what's called a second peak in San Diego, and so in some areas do, like in Sacramento as well, where it's hotter at 4 and 5 than it is at noon. And the commission said, look, we've got to reduce this grid strain at between 4 and 9. So let's come up with this time of use component, which says, we want you, Sonia Robinson, to reduce your usage between 4 and 9. Now, we immediately said, hey, wait a minute. It's like 98 degrees in Lemon Grove at 5 o'clock in the evening sometimes. I mean, you're telling me you want me to reduce my usage, this is my AC, because I'm trying to stay cool. I'm trying to be cognizant of my health and safety, because sitting inside when it's 99 degrees is not healthy and not good. And the commission just turned a blind eye. They said, no, we got to reduce usage between 4 and 9. And if we have to do it by having a time of use component, that's what we're going to do. And we were ordered to be the first utility to roll it out in California. So many of you saw our ad campaign around Wendell, reminding you that between 4 and 9, we wanted you to be cognizant of your usage. And again, this was a big debate in Sacramento, and we could always use the help in voicing your concern about this, again, because the climate differences in our service area are so significantly different, right? Again, if you live on the west side of Chula Vista and you're getting a breeze off the ocean, it's different. If you live in anywhere east of the 15, or I would even say east of the 805 sometimes, it's so much hotter at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. So them asking you to conserve means, well, don't run your dishwasher, don't do your laundry, don't use your AC. And we thought that this was an unfair approach, but the commission has said you're going to do it. They've asked PG&E and Edison to roll theirs out this year, which is going to be interesting in the middle of a pandemic. And we'll see what the answers are on that. But yes, we could use your help in saying that we think this is one of those things that should have been considered, because if there's a high likelihood that we're not going to have re-entry or resume normal operations as a society until the fall of this year with the vaccination rollout. So that means that come May, it's going to start getting hot again, and you're going to be dealing with time of use and the high usage charge. And so we have to think ahead about what is the right approach because of this unprecedented situation with the pandemic and everyone being forced to be home regularly. And so, Adam, you want to add anything onto this?
No, I was just listening to you speak, and I think you covered all the talking points really well. I think it's something that we'll continue to look at, but no, nothing to add.
Yeah, and so Sonia, again, I think that this is a question. It'd be great, if the chapter wants to send a letter to the PUC and ask them, why would you want to implement time of use right now when we're all being forced to stay home, and between 4 and 9 in the summertime, it's hotter in San Diego than it is at noon, right? And so That's just a basic question that they should answer. And it's a policy matter that was made by someone. And I often tell people the story. One year on July 4th, we were debating with the PUC about rates. And on July 4th, it was on that day, on July 3rd and July 4th, it was 105 degrees in Fresno. But in Golden Gate Park, where the PUC building is nearby, it was 45 degrees. So the staffers of the PUC were buying hot lattes to stay warm, and everybody else was baking in the rest of the state. And they were having a discussion about time of use. And they're like, I don't see why there'd be an issue with us charging people more between 4 and 9. I'm wearing a sweater right now, and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? That's what's wrong sometimes in policymaking. That's the PUC question. Sonia, the second question you had was on time of use, and then I'm drawing back. What was
the other question was what, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. And also was the mandate that will, or moratorium, excuse me, in addressing the back bills by, I think it's like over 800,000 residents throughout our county that currently are back in their bills because of the pandemic. And I'm sure it's over 150,000 customers in within the city limits of San Diego that have a significant amount of back bills also. And then that moratorium is scheduled in March. So a couple questions. Is there going to be a bill relief funding from SDG&E specifically in order to help the community members that are struggling with their bills? And is that moratorium going to be rescheduled out, or how is SDG&E going to handle that moratorium that is scheduled due in March regarding back bills?
Sure. So you're correct. There are a number of people who are behind on paying their bills. That is correct. The commission is scheduled to make a decision in April. I think it's April or May, Adam, and about how to handle the utility debt that is accruing. We don't know what they're going to do. We're waiting for direction. It's a big question because right now you have this, as one of the senators said to me, people are just accruing long-term debt as it relates to certain costs, and utility costs being one of them. So we're waiting for direction from the PUC. I would urge everyone on this town hall. You know, there are some components that are important to remind friends and neighbors and family members. You know, the neighbor to neighbor fund at the United Way is an option to help you pay your bill. The LIHEAP program, which is a federal program, is an option. And again, we started a new year, so it's now 2021. You can go and ask for and request funding from some of these buckets. And so, you know, I think that we're eager to hear what the commission is suggesting around how to pay the bills, or how to address this debt. And it's going to take a very thoughtful and thorough conversation. And I think they're really wondering how they're going to handle it, because we're just one county out of 58 where you're seeing this accrued utility debt issue. And you know, I think what the commission's going to have to weigh is pandemic's still going to be in place potentially until we have a thorough rollout of the vaccination, and people are still going to be home and the debts are still accruing. Underemployment is a bigger concern now than ever, and I often speak about this when I give speeches. The thing that people aren't talking about today is underemployment. I mean, if you're a waiter or waitress and working in a restaurant, you no longer are working your regular shifts and making tips because the restaurant's closed indoor dining. It's all takeout. You're not making any tips. People have had their hours reduced because operations have been impacted, and whereas you may have been working 40 hours, now you're only working 25 hours. These are all things that are going to feed into this discussion, Sonia, and I don't know what the commission's going to do. I think they're struggling, and I think they have to really think about this from the standpoint of, do they have the ability, because they have collected rates and collected revenue, that they can create a relief package? Can the governor create a relief package that actually helps people in the budget? And I think that those are all things that are on the table that are being discussed, because it is a significant problem in every single county, all 58 counties in the state at this point.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes, when you showed the chart of what the combination of factors goes into the rates that people pay, you had commodity as one of those
Yeah.
costs that you incurred. How much control do you have over the commodities, or are you locked into long-term contracts? And I know we have the how do I say, you have got a number of options to purchase the
Yes.
product that you sell.
Yeah.
And so how much control do you have over what that price is?
Well, so it's a great question, Brian. You know, one of the reasons why our rates are higher is when the state put the mandate in place about, you know, buying more renewables. You know, the thing we cautioned them about early on was creating a seller's market, right? And when the mandate came out, everybody that was building a renewable project was like, hey, listen, you know, SDG&E, we know you have to get to 33%, or we know you have to get to 50%. And so we're going to build a project, you're going to sign a contract. We have a lot of contracts that we signed in the 2009, 2010, 2011 range. In 2006, when the mandate was announced, we were sitting at 1% on the renewable side. And so we had to rush and sign a bunch of contracts in 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. Those contracts, by today's rates terms, were above market. But at the time, it was a seller's market. They're like, you don't have an option. You got to, this is what we're charging. This is what you're going to sign for. They're 20-year deals. So a lot of those contracts will start to end as we get to that 20-year mark. And we're going to find, you know, renewables are cheaper in today's market. So you can sign a contract today and it's cheaper. One of the debates that we're having as a company is, as a large portion of the region is considering either joining a CCA or a JPA, we are in a really difficult position because signing a 20-year contract for a cheaper renewable today means you're making an obligation for 20 years for the customers that you think you're going to have. We don't know how many customers we're going to have because of the growth of the CCAs and the JPAs. We know we have one that starts this year. I think that the North County CCA will start maybe next year. Counties looking at what they want to do. So it's our South Orange County cities have now yesterday announced that 2 of them are going into a CCA. So it's a really interesting and difficult time for us as a company, because normally we would say, listen, we're going to have 300 customers for the next 20 years, and we're going to sign a 20-year contract, and we got a great price this year. Now we're like, geez, if we, you know, how many customers are we going to have? We're going to have 300. We're going to have 200. We're going to have 50. And the difficulty in signing contracts today is that when you sign that contract and make that obligation, let's assume, Brian, that the contract obligation is $20. You have 20 people. Each of those people has $1 of that $20 obligation. If 3 of them leave, what the law says is they need to take their dollar obligation with them to their next stop, and that's messy, right? It's a messy process and discussion. And so the levers we have are, you are correct. We can look out at the market, see what's available for purchase. Nowadays we can look at a short-term contract, you know, if we have to have a gap to fill. We are looking at, you know, where it's not just about renewable contracts, it's about what we're going to build, you know, battery storage projects and things of that nature that will help meet our demands. But again, we do, the levers we have on part, or we can look at the market, but it's also directed by the PUC. So sometimes the PUC will say, we want you to buy 100 megawatts of X. And we'll say, well, do you really want us to buy that? Because we don't know how many customers we're going to have. And they'll say, well, this is what we want you to do. That's how complex our world is, especially these days, Brian. So does that answer your question?
Yes. Then as a follow-up, a lot of folks are like me that after the Zoom is over, questions will pop into our minds. Can you type in your email or other contact information into the chat, and it all comes to me, and then I can put it out to folks so that when their questions come up that they can contact you.
Absolutely. And what I'll do is I'll send you, Nick, can you send in the chat, can you send Brian the emails for Tashonda, Adam, myself, and Warren, and obviously Kellen's on for any questions related to the CCA. So yes, Brian, we'll send you all of the email addresses, and then you can access any of us with any further questions that you may have.
Okay, and then I'll put that, I can broadcast to everybody so that they can ask the questions that'll pop up after the Zoom is over.
Perfect.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Matthew?
Yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to ask, and thank you for bringing up the point about long-term energy contracts and trying to find ways to be creative with using them. Why hasn't SDG&E sold them to San Diego Community Power? I know that SDCP had offered and been really interested, I think actually even engaged in one of your RFPs for those, but hadn't been successful. If we want to partner with local community choice energy programs for them to be successful, and you have this energy, these energy contracts that could help facilitate that, why hasn't that gone forward?
Yeah, great question, Matt. You actually, it's funny because we were talking with Bill yesterday, and we've sent a letter back. I think that the short answer is that the conversations have not finished. We've been waiting for a few aspects and direction from the PUC, but we do anticipate that the San Diego JPA is going to have the opportunity to buy some of the excess contracts from us. It's just a matter of the conversations have not finalized yet, and I think based on the conversation that Scott Kreider had with Bill yesterday, I think that and the letter that is being received by Bill today, it will once again reaffirm that yes, that is still on the table, and we're going to look at how we can make that happen as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
And Matt, if you have any further questions, Matt, we'd love to meet with you as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we're coming to the end of our time. Does anybody have any questions before Mitch and his team wrap up? I want to appreciate everybody for taking time out of their busy schedule. This is extremely informative. This is one of many town halls that are going to go throughout the city of San Diego to make sure that everybody is educated. So Mitch, if you want to wrap it on up for us.
I appreciate it again, Ms. Francine. I think these are important, and we appreciate those of you who are joining us today, because sometimes it's not good enough to put something in writing. Sometimes, and I will say this, most of the time, it's not comprehensive enough to put it in a tweet in 140 characters, or put it in a picture on Instagram. Sometimes just good old-fashioned conversation and communication is the best way to get clarity and to drive collaboration. And I will repeat what I said earlier. We are always interested in meeting with people who have questions. We look forward to meeting with Tara after this to discuss her questions. And if Matt has further questions, we look forward to meeting with him. And Brian, as I said, you're going to get all the email addresses. And we believe we are well situated to continue to be the energy provider, energy service provider in the city of San Diego. And we think that what you saw in the slides about the work that we've done, I'm sure for some of you that was a surprise and you didn't know that. But I want you to know that will continue if we are selected to be the provider going forward for the next 20 years. And I think that what Mrs. Montgomery said, Councilwoman Montgomery said, is important. Conversation, communication, partnership. That's what the city needs, and that's what SDG&E is committed to: conversations, resolving differences of opinion, and again, working together to truly drive the implementation of a climate action plan that is exemplary for every city in the country. And our region is closely connected, and we take great pride in serving the 25 cities every day. And again, Ms. Francine and everybody, we're not perfect. We're not always going to get it right the first time. But I can assure you, and for those of you who know me, if you call me and there's an issue or problem, I'm going to give it great focus, and we're going to try and resolve it in the best way possible. And we just ask that you remember that we're doing a lot of things we don't ever tout or talk about that are benefits and positive for the region. And we look forward to continuing to do that, because that's what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be a community partner, not just a corporation. And so we thank you for the time today, and we look forward to answering any further questions that may arise. Once again, thank you.
Appreciate everybody. And I want to make sure that if you're not a member of the NAACP San Diego branch, that you go to our website, SanDiegoNAACP.org, and become a life member, because you are the life's blood. Tony, did you want to share anything?
No, I'm just really impressed by Mitch's presentation and also your leadership, Francine. I want to say thank you for that. And we just really are trying to do our best for the community here. And if you need anything, of course, I'll be there to support the NAACP too.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, our time has come.
Thank you, Francine, very much.
Wonderful week.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
Great day.
you.
Stay safe, everyone.